Hello and welcome to week 4 on experiential learning and discussion strategies. Hope you're well and ready to get started this week. Like last week, we're going to spend this time giving you some key principles and examples I think will help you really ground your strategies. So we'll focus on some of the 5 essential elements of promoting a favorable discussion. So if you're ready, let's get started. Well, here's an inspiring quote that underlines the importance of asking questions. I wish I could say that Thomas Berger was my inspiration for rethinking the art and science of asking questions in the class, but it really wasn't. Instead, my inspiration was Judge Judy. I was delighted by her insistence that the person in charge asks the questions, not answers the questions. And many times I was so busy answering my learners' questions, I was doing more of the work than they were. Here are 5 key techniques and principles that I'll use to share with you about discussions, and you'll see each one builds upon the previous one. First technique is the perception check. It's asking students, what do you notice? What else? What else? What else? Continually find out what they are perceiving or seeing before you ask them what they are conceiving or thinking. Let's give it a try. If I were to ask you, what do you notice about this photo, you might say snowboarding or ski lift. You might say blue jacket, green jacket, but you even get further down to see the patches and the helmets and the coats, and really get an in-depth experience of this photo. And then if I said, what does this tell us about teaching and learning? We begin to have an interesting discussion about who's the teacher, the one demonstrating the skill or the one watching the skill, and what does that let us know about teaching and learning? So asking people to perceive graphs, text, images, anything first before they think of it in terms of your objectives is a key discussion strategy. Your learners' perceptions, it's time to promote conceptions. And a great way to do that is to ask open-ended questions that have more than one correct or valid answer. Closed-ended questions only have one correct answer. Now, if you're ever at a loss for what kind of questions to ask, here are 4 that are almost always relevant. What's the same, different? What's more or less important? You can always ask these questions when students are ready to start conceiving of different solutions. For example, if I gave you these types of assessment questions and asked you what's same, different, more or less important, you have a variety of answers. You might notice that number 1 and 4 almost always are objective questions and have one correct answer, while 2 and 3 may be more open-ended. And number 3 may be easy to write, but very difficult to assess. You may feel that number 3, the essay, is more important for deeper levels of knowledge. So by asking just simple open-ended questions, you begin to discover all the different kind of conceptions that students are having about the content. It's important not only to have the right question, but to ask the question in the right way. For example, Elsie, what is 2 plus 2? Is a closed-ended question with only one correct answer. But also it's asked incorrectly because I first identified a single learner to answer the question. And that puts the learner on the spot, and the rest of the class is likely to become quiet or shy. Instead, I want to follow the ABCs of questioning, which is first, ask an open-ended question, then breathe, give ample wait time for all students to form a response, and then, finally, call on multiple students to provide multiple answers. You can see the answers to this could be 2 plus 2, 1 plus 3, or 1.5 plus 2.5, and on and on and on. This helps all students prepare an answer. No one checks out. It gives everyone time to think and ways to involve more learners. If your goal is to pose a more complicated question and you need to provide a more thoughtful response pattern, the think, write, pair, share is an effective way to produce this kind of response. So you give the specific finite task in time, answer this question in 3 minutes, for example, and you ask the learners to write on a scrap piece of paper in a notebook their response, and then you ask them to pair with a partner and trade answers back and forth. Finally, you can come back to the whole group and ask someone to share what they heard from a partner for the whole class. This is very important because by the time you get to the share, each learner has had a chance to think, had a chance to write, had a chance to express it verbally to a partner, and had a chance to be responsible for hearing. And this multiple cycles of thoughtfulness will allow for a deeper response than just throwing out a complicated question and expecting a student to stand and deliver a thoughtful and even eloquent response. This is the kind of question I would pose for a think, write, pair, share based on our lesson today. I would ask you to pick out a key quote and then write one thing you would intend to do differently as a learning leader based on the quote, then pair with a partner and then share with the whole class. This is an in-depth guided discussion protocol, and you'll see how it builds from perception to open-ended questions to processing time to practice to actually fulfilling different roles in a discussion. So you could provide your learners with some article, text, graph, in this case a short anecdote, and have them note down all of their perceptions on their own and also what they think is most or least important, similar or different about the people in the anecdote. Then you could assign students into different groups, like in this example with a deck of cards, and have them brainstorm all the possibilities about what each of the characters did right or wrong in the brainstorming session, and then evaluate them as a group. Then, when coming back to the whole group, I would have the heart group, for example, talk about what the professor did right, and then I would require at least 2 questions from 2 members of another group, and I, as the instructor, would never intervene until the very end of the activity. This is a way to fully release control of the activity to the members of the learning community. I hope that this has given you some 5 key principles and examples of how to build an effective discussion environment among your learners.